All right, welcome to The Cut and the Dry. This is Isaac Lopez. Yes, I know I'm not Kip Mock, and it's a disappointment for all, but we are here recording a special for The Cut and the Dry. This is part 2 of the conversation Kip and I are sitting down and having about social media. And this is pretty free-ranging. It's not our normal show, which is often very structured, and that's really good. But we just wanted to have a bit more casual conversation where Kip does not know the questions I'm bringing to him. He knows the genre, which is social media, but the specific questions he was not made aware of until we are sitting down, and he still doesn't know the last 2 questions I'm going to ask him.
All right.
So let's get the ball rolling.
Let's go.
These, actually, I'm not going to say that because I don't want to spoil it. So in the previous special that we did, we discussed why Kip left Facebook and Instagram, why I joined other social medias, kind of like the bottom rung, like Parler, MeWe, and Gab.
Yeah.
We also pushed around that there are different ideas, and there's not necessarily a wrong answer for what you do on social media or why you're not on social media. Like but there are wrong answers to that.
Right. There are rights and there are wrongs involved in the decisions you make about social media, but there is not a right answer or a wrong answer about your usage of social media.
Right.
So what we basically the crux of the last episode was trying to boil it down to what do you have to think about? Like what is the scale that you use to judge how you're going to use or not use social media.
Right.
And our conclusions were basically try to boil down everything that you do on social media to does this glorify God and enhance his kingdom? Does this advance God's kingdom or does it not?
Right.
Because it's either neutral or it's not, and that's on the bad side of the scale. Or it does, and that's on the good side of the scale.
Yeah.
So find where your interactions with social media fall onto this scale of advancing or detracting from or being neutral to God's kingdom, and weigh those things, and that's what you need to make your decision on. So that was pretty much a summary of our last special on social media, and Isaac's got a couple more questions.
Yeah.
So I think we'll just jump right into those and see where we go with this.
Yeah, thanks for saving my bacon on that summary. My mind's a little tired right now.
No worries, man.
This is our 3rd episode.
3rd episode recorded.
We're recording.
Today. Yeah.
Yeah, this is nuts, but it's a marathon and it's fun.
Yeah.
Like I do just want to mention, Kip and I have a blast recording these.
Right. We do get paid to do other things, and we don't get paid to do this. So if we weren't having fun, we wouldn't be here.
Right. No, that's a very important thing to mention. Let's launch into these questions, though.
Okay.
I've got one that you mentioned briefly in the previous episode, and I want to deal with censorship on social media. Big tech censorship. When it comes to specifically Facebook, there have been multiple instances of Facebook censoring people for what seems to be not a great reason.
Right.
And my question that I would like to phrase out of that and focus here on is, how should Christians deal with censorship? Should they stay to fight, or should they go to a different account, social media, like Parler, that markets itself as we are the free speech platform? I don't think it's either or, but
there's a third option, which is just leaving social media entirely.
There you go. That's Kip.
Okay.
Right.
I do have a Parler account.
Right.
I do technically still have a Twitter account that I don't use, and I check my wife's Instagram every once in a while. That's a broad overview of my interaction with social media. But yeah, I did kind of choose the third route.
Okay.
Practically speaking.
Right.
And I think there are a number of reasons to go each route, but I want to start by taking this all the way back down to the foundation. I know we do this in every episode, but we say this in every single episode. But social media can be a valuable tool. I don't want to discredit that, but at the same time, just remember what matters, right? As you're dealing with censorship and should I be on this social media or that social media or not, it doesn't really matter.
Right, right.
I don't really care. I told you before we recorded the last special that I would probably say this, and it's taken me we've been recording for, I guess, 35 minutes total across these two specials, and then here I finally am. I don't care.
There you go. There you go.
And the reason
so you can now turn off the podcast. Everything else after this is just extra material. I'm just kidding. Anyway, Kip was about to roll.
I do have a reason that I don't care, though.
Okay.
And I think that's important.
We should talk about that.
The reason I don't care is that it doesn't matter. And the reason it doesn't matter is all that does matter is how you interact with your family, how you raise your kids,
right,
how you treat your wife, how you interact with your church community, and how you interact with your business colleagues and associates, clients, customers, bosses, managers, whoever it may be. That's what matters. Like, how are you impacting God's kingdom primarily in your family?
Right.
And it spreads out in ripples. So imagine you're a droplet falling into a glassy pond, and when that droplet falls in, the very first ring is your relationship with God.
Right.
The second ring is your relationship with your wife and your kids, and then your parents and your siblings, your aunts and your uncles and cousins, and then out from there, your business associates, the people you work with on a day-to-day basis, the people you serve, the people you work for, the people who work for you. And then along with that, kind of, I'm not doing this in a strict order, but you have your church, your immediate church family, and then you have things like the people who serve you coffee at whatever coffee shop you go to. You have these rings going out. And my argument for why I don't care is that the ring of social media is like a mile out in the pond.
Right.
You have so much more that matters before you get there that I don't really care what happens at the social media level.
Right. Okay.
So that is my overall answer to your question, but it doesn't really answer your specific question of censorship.
Right. Right.
So do you want to interject something
there?
Well,
I do. I actually want to change course here.
Okay.
Because you brought up something that I had a question kind of framed to what you just brought up.
Okay.
But social media, yes, is in that outer ripple. Right. I would agree that there are more cares than I can give. By the time I get to the social media ripple, I'm very cared out.
Right.
But there are times, like the times that we are living in right now, where churches have moved onto social media for different periods of time. Whether it's carrying on services online, and they have a Facebook Watch live going at that time to share their message with their people and their flock that are at home. And it's interesting to see what lockdowns did to bring that social media ripple maybe a little closer to home.
Right.
Do you think that Christians practiced good literacy when it came to social media understanding and using it as a good tool with lockdowns, or did they use it as an excuse?
Oh, that's a very good question. I don't think there's a simple answer.
Obviously, that's why I asked it.
I don't think that I can say, oh yeah, churches did a great job.
Right.
All churches did a great job, and I'm not really in a position of authority to judge elder boards of various churches that may or may not have handled things correctly. But I think that the bottom line is, did the church carry out its mission of coming together and worshiping the Lord? Was that successfully done? And I think it was a difficult time, and a time where lots of churches were tested on whether or not they were doing that effectively when they were meeting in person.
Right.
And I'm grateful to be at Christ Church, where I think they handled it incredibly well. And I'm grateful for the leadership of our elders and pastors who did a great job of handling the situation by first giving the government the benefit of the doubt, submitting to what the government was saying. We skipped church for 3 weeks and had Facebook Live and YouTube Live, I believe, recordings of the sermons so that we could continue to fellowship. And we had published songs that we sang together.
Yeah.
In our homes.
Right.
Yeah, so after 3 weeks, we had a couple weeks of car services,
Right.
and then we went back to
Interesting.
in-person
Yeah.
fellowship because at that point, 5 weeks later, we knew it was a joke, right? And I think the elders did a great job in their timing of all of that. So I can speak to how Christ Church handled it, and I can think of a number of churches that I don't think handled it well, but I'm not going to call them out because it's not I don't
Right.
think it's my place.
Right.
So all that to say, though, I don't know if it's a social media specific question because
Yeah.
YouTube isn't, I guess you could call it social media, but it isn't really social media as you think of Facebook being
Right.
social media. Obviously, there's commenting, but it's primarily a publication format, right? And so in a scenario where content needs to be provided
Right.
electronically, it can be done through a church's website. Can be done.
Fair enough.
It
Yeah.
could even be done by DVDs being
Right,
sent to
right.
people's houses. You know.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It's not a social media specific question.
That's a good point. Yeah.
From my perspective, at least, and I think a lot of it was centered around social media because so many people are there.
Right.
But I don't think it necessarily has to be that way.
Yeah.
But I do want to answer your censorship question.
Yeah.
if I may.
Let's go back to it. Yeah. Let's close on that.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll close talking about censorship, and I think the only way to deal with that as a Christian is thoughtfully, prayerfully, and carefully.
Okay.
What I would recommend not doing is not thinking about it.
Yes. Yeah.
You must think about it. You must recognize that it's happening, and recognize that impacts what social media is, how it functions, and it should impact how you interact with it. Whether that means you leave, whether that means you switch to different platforms, or whether that means you stick with it and fight,
Right.
is not mine to tell. You can do whatever you think is best based on the situation that you're in.
Right.
But what you can't do is just ignore it.
Right.
You must recognize that it is happening, and recognize that really does change the landscape of social media as a whole. And it's not just Facebook. Twitter has turned out to be pretty much just as bad,
Right.
and in some cases worse. Like Facebook will have notices under pretty much every
Right.
single post,
Right.
but Twitter in a lot of cases will hide a tweet, and you have to like click in a very specific place to even see what the person had to say.
Right.
And then there's the whole question of shadow banning,
Right.
and it's Facebook's domain. They can choose what content is in front of people's eye holes, right? And if they're censoring it and putting a banner under it, I managed pretty carefully what I saw on Facebook.
Right.
But if you're not managing that very carefully, you're probably never even going to see the things that are
Yeah.
censored.
Yeah.
And you'll have no idea what's going on. So recognize that it is happening, and be cognizant of that, and like we said in our last special, boil it all down to the scales.
Yeah.
Find whether or not your interaction is glorifying to God or not.
Yeah.
And there is another factor of time investment, because your specific question is, should they leave these platforms? Should they stay and fight? Staying and fighting is a time investment.
It is.
So
It is.
so you must take that into account. If you're going to stay, there is going to be fighting involved.
Right.
And fighting is a drain on your mental capacity, a drain on your emotional capacity, and it's
on your spiritual capacity.
right. It's not a fight for everybody.
Right.
There are more important battles. Like I said before, I think this is an outer ripple. I think this is a mile over on the other side of the pond. Very big pond, by the way.
Very big pond.
But if you think that it is your place to be fighting the battles all the way on the other side of the pond, go you.
Yeah.
That's not me, but
Right.
go you, and be careful, and count the costs. So
Yeah.
that's. I'm sorry I don't have any more
No.
specific of an answer to your question.
No,
but
that's good. I think that it is important for Christians to build up a literacy when it comes to. I would like Christians to be literate when it comes to social media use. I think the church can be slow to adapt to certain things. I don't necessarily know. I haven't done a deep dive on any statistics like what churches are doing now to get their stuff out there on social media. But it is something that has been pressing, especially in 2020 with how they're reaching everyone. So I thought it was an interesting. I thought that your answer was good and the right one. So I think that boils down to, because really when it comes to it, don't confuse social media, or don't overthink it when it comes to social media. Put it in its proper place.
Right.
Because there is nothing new under the sun, as King Solomon has said multiple times, right?
Yes.
There is truly nothing new under the sun. Everything is sped up a little bit with social media and the advent of the internet. We're closer with other people than we probably would. People on the other side of the pond, we can now communicate within the matter of seconds now, which that's something that I think people need to adjust to. But I think always putting it in its proper context, and don't say this is a newfangled thing. It's like, no, it's just an advanced fangled thing.
Right. And I think I want to note here that just because you have the capability to communicate with thousands of people doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the conclusion I came to is, you know what? These are the 10 ripples. Everybody really only has the capability and the capacity to deal with a certain number of ripples, right?
Right.
So you need to figure out, I have this many ripples that I must ensure that I take care of. I must take care of my relationship with God, my family, my church, my business relationships, et cetera, et cetera. So figure out what those things are that you must take care of. And then don't worry about the rest of it. Just because you technically have the ability now to communicate with people in different parts of the world and see content from people in New York and Georgia and North Dakota, it doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. So I think that's a really good point. People need to adjust to that because 150 years ago you didn't have the problem of having the technical capacity to communicate with more than your natural limit of ripples. And now
manage your ripples.
Manage your ripples. That's the takeaway from this special.
It's so good.
I apologize for the analogy. There's probably a better one.
I think when you get to your third show in one day, that's probably a side effect.
Hashtag manage your ripples.
Hashtag manage your ripples on Parler. Hashtag it at Kip Mock.
Yes. That's the takeaway for the show is just because you think you can manage 15, maybe you can only manage 10. I'm not, these aren't hard numbers obviously, but just maintain the capacity that you have. Don't try to extend it. Don't try to push it, and make sure that the things that you are managing, the ripples that you are taking care of, are the ones that you want to be taken care of.
Right.
Because you might find that you're trying to manage a ripple that doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And maybe that is social media.
Yeah.
So I think that's all I've got to say.
Yeah,
but thanks for bringing that up.
I think that's a good place to end right there.
Awesome.
I mean, we're hitting that 20-minute mark, and third show in one day. I know this is going to be spread out, so you guys are going to be like, why do you guys sound so tired or weird? Well, I mean, it's because of that. But
I, on the other hand, have had like 3 Red Bulls today, so I'm still good to go.
Your answers are on fire, and it's fun to see you back in the saddle.
Well, hey, this has been a fun day of recording. We look forward to hearing from you guys and what you think of what we've said here on our Discord channel, and however you choose to get in touch with us. We'd love to chat with you and hear what you have to say. So with that, for the Cut and the Dry special, episode 2, this is Kip and Isaac signing off.